Let's start with a miracle this morning. Business Insider ran a positive story about Tesla. No, not a news story, a first-person travel story about how great an M3 was to rent for a trip from Southern California to Northern California and back. Well, now we would like to have a miracle of a positive day in the stock market, and maybe a positive day for Tesla. But the news is not helping, and both are down hard at the opening, although there is a little profit taking even in the first 10 minutes. This is Randy Kirk. If you like the morning show, please hit like, subscribe, and notify. If you didn't watch last night's show with Brian Wong, that was a big mistake. That isn't maybe one of the better shows we've ever had. So much amazing information about China and Asia. We'll be following up on that later today with my conversation with Jeff Lutz, and I've already recorded that. It's really, really good. You want to watch that later today. You could have watched it yesterday if you were a Patreon member. So join Patreon, and sometimes you'll get early opportunities as well as unique content. And of course, you get a free book. All right, let's go on here. Let's take a look here. Another miracle to pray for would be Fed Chief Powell is speaking at Jackson Hole this morning. It was this speech a year ago that started the rate hikes in earnest. I'm not expecting any dovishness out of Mr. Powell this morning, and the market will be chewing its collective nails until he is done with that speech, I can assure you. I did see one technical analyst this morning that's saying that Tesla is wound like a spring. It's like all the technical analysis right now would point to Tesla going up like crazy. Obviously, the fundamentals would point to that. I couldn't agree more, but I do take technical analysis kind of, I look at it broadly. I'm mostly interested in stopping points and starting points, resistance levels, and maybe an occasional look at the moving averages, because you can get 5 technical analysts in a room, ask them for their opinion, and get 7 opinions. Well, here's one to look at. Just 35.9, let's call it 36% of investors are bullish right now about the next 6 months, down from 45% last week and 49% 2 years ago. The decline snapped a 10-week streak when bullishness had exceeded the historic average. Well, okay, there's this old saw, and it turns out to be true quite often, is when there's a lot of bullishness, that's when you can expect the bear, and when there's the most bearishness is when you can expect the bull. So the fact that people are getting more bearish right now in their thinking could mean that we're starting to get close to the lows. On Thursday, the Dow closed below the 50-day moving average, speaking of, for the first time since June 1. That's a bearish signal for investors. The 30 stock index tumbled 290 points, or 0.84. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 declined 7.77, and the NASDAQ slid 1.17. Of course, the NASDAQ has been kind of doing the Tesla thing where it goes down more on down days and up more on up days. Well, here's a good one. Here's kind of an amazing one. SpaceX turned a profit. Now, why does that matter to this channel? Well, because Elon has promised to eventually go public on Starlink, but there needs to be a nice steady profit first. He's intimated there might be some way for Tesla stockholders to be prioritized on any such IPO. One can only hope. But anyway, good news for SpaceX. I believe that could be their first profit ever. They were also reported to have sold all their Bitcoin holdings, and that news, I believe, is really the reason, or it seemed to be the reason, why Bitcoin dropped over 9% yesterday afternoon. This news is developing, and there's some wobbling now on whether SpaceX actually sold, but they did downgrade their holdings because they had bought at higher rates than what the market was at the time. Maybe there were other factors involved, but as of the last time I looked this morning, Bitcoin was still down at those lows. It had gone a little lower, but it was still down 9-10% compared to yesterday, the starting points yesterday morning. Now, there are other news of Lots and lots and lots of news and rumors of Highland announcement in Shanghai are growing daily. I mean, it's got to be coming up here really, really close. Now, Teslarati is reporting that showroom display models are ready to be sent to showrooms in China this month, may already be on their way there. With orders starting to be open at the end of the month, they're also reporting that some showroom salespeople are offering a choice of the current model or the Highland when people make a deposit. Those rumors continue this morning that they're in fact taking orders for the Highland. Don't know, but pretty soon we should know one way or the other. Here's an odd one. A new rental car program is being rolled out in Texas, a new Tesla rental car program. A position has been posted for someone to head up this effort. Now, it appears it's primarily concerned with the collision centers, but it also mentions some kind of an expansion to airports. And this could be Tesla playing around with some kind of a Tesla-owned business, rental business at the airports, or maybe it's that this individual will be there to increase their rental position with the existing rental car companies. Don't know. There's no real information one way or the other on that. But now, as of this morning, we're also seeing sightings for other positions, similar positions being offered in other locations. Okay, so the bond issue is really what it's all about, and China. Those are those two things are what's on the market's mind this morning, and here's where they come together. The world's second largest economy, China, trimmed its exposure to American government debt by $103 billion, or 11%, according to Treasury Department data published Tuesday. It's the third straight month that Beijing has sold treasuries, brings its total holdings to their lowest level since May 2009, according to the South China Post. Bond prices have tanked in 2023, with two-year yields jumping 169 basis points and returning to 10-year notes 127 points. We all know all that already. China appears to be fueling the rout, with authorities locked in a geopolitical battle with the U.S. and engaged in de-dollarization. So this is a piece of why the yields are going up so much. They're selling, when people sell bonds, the yields go up. Here's another story. A gauge of future U.S. economic activity dropped for the 16th straight month in July. Though the pace of the decline slowed from earlier in the year, a survey showed on Thursday. The Conference Board said its leading economic index fell 0.4% last month after declining 0.7% in June. Last month's decrease was in line with economists' expectations. The leading index continues to suggest that economic activity is likely to decelerate and descend into mild contraction in the months ahead, said Justiana Zabinski LaMonica. There's a name that you would have to spell for everybody. The senior manager and business cycle indicator lead at the Conference Board. The Conference Board now forecasts a short and shallow recession in Q4 2023 or Q1 2024 time span. So economists have been forecasting recession since last year, but most now do not expect a downturn, with data ranging from retail sales to home building surprising on the upside. So what do you got here? So you would think that the Conference Board coming out with the leading indicators going down would have been a stimulus to the market yesterday, that where bad news is good news for the market and good news is bad news, but no, everything is bad news right now for the market. So inflation is also slowing, according to this report, and the labor market is gradually cooling, according to this report, all continuing with more and more good news. Now, here was the surprise yesterday. Walmart comes out with an excellent report and excellent guidance, and the stock went lower and the market went lower. So if good news is bad news, that doesn't necessarily mean for the stock, because we've seen other stocks had really good reports and their stock went up. Why did Walmart's stock go down yesterday in this situation? I have no idea. Maybe because all eyes are on interest rates in China. Walmart would benefit from that because China's pricing of their products for export should be going down, with the yuan at the lowest point in, like, I forget how many years. Weak these are the reasons why things were going down. Weak new orders, high interest rates, a dip in consumer perceptions of the outlook for business conditions, and decreasing hours worked in manufacturing fueled the leading indicator's 0.4% decline. The leading index continues to suggest economic activity is likely to deteriorate. All right, here's some news in the BEV world. Hyundai wholesale shipments were up. Okay, so their BEVs up 73% for the first half, 151,000 shipped. This is right in line with my expectations that Hyundai Kia might end up the third largest automaker in the world behind Tesla and BYD by 2027, 2028. They could easily be at 5 million or more vehicles by that time. That's a big news for Hyundai. Here's how I see the Tesla swings, including the current one. It just goes way beyond nature. It goes way beyond the natural. It goes way up, and then it swings way back down when the market goes way back down and when Tesla is down. So let's go through this. Let's see. I'm hoping that you'll be able to visualize this. Tesla was sitting around around $22 before it started its big move back in 2019. The NASDAQ was around 6,800 at the same time. Well, Tesla went up 18 times to 410. The NASDAQ topped out at 16.3 or 2.4 times higher. So while the NASDAQ was going up 2.4 times, Tesla went up 18 times. Then when Tesla fell, it dropped 75% to 101. NASDAQ only dropped 33%. So the Tesla dropped 75%, NASDAQ dropped 33%. Then Tesla tripled to 300, while the NASDAQ went up only 50%, back to 1,600. And then finally, Tesla has recently dropped 27%, while the NASDAQ has dropped only about 10. So you can see when Tesla swings, it swings wide. And we talk about maybe a 1 or a 2 times rate, a beta rather, with regard to Tesla and the market. But you can see that when it swings, it gets way out to the end of these swings, Tesla just keeps on going and gets way out there. So that's why you can expect, I don't think this is going to change in the next year or two. Eventually, Tesla will be making so much money and Tesla will be throwing off so much cash that these swings will start to modify. We know that Tesla swings way harder than the index, and I've commonly compared it to the Cathie Wood stocks, though that comparison ended with this last move up 3 or 4 months ago. Part of the oversized swings now have to be seen in the context of way oversized upward moves. So then on another piece of news with BEVs, shares of Xpeng, or Xpeng, I think is the right pronunciation, were down more than 7% in the pre-market this morning as the Chinese electric car makers' troubles continued. Their Friday results showed a wider than expected loss in the second quarter. The net loss was wider than the 2.7 billion won reported in the second quarter of last year. It was also the biggest quarterly loss Xpeng has posted since going public in August of 2020. Basically, their margins went negative, even though they were in line on revenues. In other words, their margins didn't go down from 27% to 18%. Their margins went down from positive 3 or 4% to, or I think, I forget, somewhere around there, to a negative 3%. Well, this morning, Elon is in Japan, but nobody knows why. Well, there's Panasonic is over there. So they could be in talks with some of the leadership about a megapack factory. Who knows? Maybe even something other than that. They could have even, dropped by Toyota and or Honda. Some of these other folks are over there. And it's also the last stop on the 10 Top Nation tour. He had recently visited 9 of the top 10 nations in the world. People were speculating that these would be the most likely places for megapack factories. Who knows? Maybe we're going to open up 10 megapack factories very soon. Well, what's going to happen next in the market is a really hard call. The Jackson Hole speech today from Powell, interest rates, all of this is top of mind. China, the China implosion is way up there. China is just imploding like crazy. It's just, there doesn't seem to be any real ability to get a real good look at what that's going to look like. But remember, that's what I'm looking at in depth with Larry Goldberg, Brian Wong, and Jeff Lutz. And you want to watch that program later today. The one from yesterday with Brian, there's a card up above for that. You want to take a look at that for sure. Okay, so right now, the 217 number is where we are. That's what I predicted as being the likely low. Yes, if we break through 217 and end up at 215, 214, 213, we end up something like that, then 200 is not off the table. The round number barriers are usually the hardest to break through, but then I think 217 is going to be a very hard stop. We were lower than that in the pre-market, but it bounced back up to around 217. Let's take a look at where we are now. Okay, so the Dow has bounced back somewhat, is actually kind of headed toward the green. It's down 39 points. The NASDAQ, same thing, although it's not as strongly headed that way. It's still down 111. S&P also near the green at down 15. Tesla is now sitting at 216 roughly, down 337 for the morning, but still in that range where it just, if we break below that kind of 216, 217 area, we could be going all the way down to 200, as I just mentioned. Now let's take a look at the rest of these indicators. We have the crypto continuing, still around 26.2. That's where it's been sitting. It's been, after the slide, that's kind of where it's been sitting. We have the dollar is hovering at its multi-week highs. Gold at 1921, that is still about where it was yesterday, although it's showing up $6 this morning. I'm hard pressed to see how that happened, but kind of the commodities, silver, copper, the commodities are never a safe haven, right? Are they just so battered down that people that are taking their money out of the stock market, out of bonds, are looking for someplace to go? I'm not exactly sure. Oil at $80.81, so that's up a little bit this morning. The bonds are down, but they're at 4.251, the 10-year, with the 2-month is up a little bit this morning, and the 2-year is also down this morning, about the same as the 10-year in terms of how much it's down. So that's where we are this morning. Again, I want to encourage you to watch this series on China. I really mean it. You should, I know it's going to end up probably being 3 or 4 hours of listening time before it's all done. And that's a lot of investment on your part, but it's going to be worth it. You really want to watch these. Take a look at yesterday's. Remember, I put the card up earlier, or you can look for it in the information below. And then later on today with Jeff Lutz. And then, of course, tonight, we'll have Good News Friday. I'll be hunting for good news all day long so that I can bring you Good News Friday tonight. And then tomorrow morning, it's going to be Larry Goldberg back, where we will summarize everything that's happened on the China reporting and try to put some sense into it. We're looking at the economy of China. We're looking at where the economy is likely to go short-term as well as long-term. We're looking at China and comparing it to India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, everybody else in that market. We're taking a look at their trading partners with South Korea and Japan, Australia, even Taiwan. Some surprises in that. You might not know who China's major trading partners are. And we're also taking a look at the war situation between China and Taiwan. Is there going to be a war? Brian Wang and I looked at that in detail yesterday. Will there be a war between these two? Is it smart for China to do that war? Would it be, does it matter whether it's smart or not? And if there was a war, what would America do? What would Japan do? What would all the people in the border China do if there was such a war? What happens to the national semiconductor? I mean, holy mackerel, we're going to cover all of that. If you didn't watch yesterday with Brian Wang, you really need to go back and take a look at that. And then in the meantime, hit like, hit subscribe, hit notify, so that you'll be reminded of these upcoming shows, and then join Patreon. Thank you again. We've had a couple of members join in the last couple of days. So please think about spending $5 a month. Think about going up and just testing the waters for free for 7 days. And then also you get a free book if you do join. That's all I've got for you this morning. Let's get this thing posted so you can see what I've got right and what I've got wrong. And it's been great talking to you.